I walked away from him thinking he was just a lazy deadbeat, convinced I had my life all sorted out with someone else. But life has a twisted sense of humour. On my very first day at my new job, I walked into the conference room and my heart absolutely dropped. That serious, powerful boss sitting in the VP's chair, he was none other than my so-called failure of an ex-boyfriend. But here is the million-dollar question. How did the guy who wouldn't even get out of bed end up running the show? What is the real secret behind this total transformation? Was it my leaving or did someone else inspire him? And in this crazy game of fate, now that my ex is my boss, how on earth is this story going to end? I'm Sneha and I'll be walking you through this roller coaster. Let's dive into the full story. 6 a.m. The alarm on my iPhone screams through the silence of the bedroom, shattering the fragile peace of the morning. I slam my hand down on the snooze button, my heart already racing before my eyes are even fully open. The city outside, Chicago, with its grey skies and unforgiving wind, is already waking up. The grind doesn't wait for anyone. I roll over and there he is, Mark, buried under a mountain of duvet. He hasn't moved an inch. His breathing is deep, rhythmic, the sleep of the innocent or the ignorant. In the dim light filtering through the blinds, he looks peaceful, handsome even. The same messy hair that I used to run my fingers through during our sophomore year of college. But now looking at him doesn't give me butterflies. It gives me a heavy, sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, like I've swallowed a stone. I slide out of bed, careful not to wake him. Not that a marching band could wake him before noon. The floorboards creak under my feet, cold and unforgiving. As I walk to the bathroom, I step over a pair of jeans left on the floor. A controller for his PlayStation sits on the edge of the dresser, its blue light blinking softly. The only evidence of how he spent his night while I was trying to sleep. 5 years. That's how long we've been doing this dance. 5 years since we met in that lit theory class. Sparks flying, thinking we were going to take on the world together. We were the it couple. He was the only son of a wealthy family from Connecticut. Charming, relaxed, with a smile that could disarm a bomb. I was the scholarship kid, hungry, desperate to prove I belonged. Back then, his laid-back attitude felt like a relief. He grounded me. He told me to slow down, to enjoy life, but somewhere along the line, slowing down turned into stopping completely. I stand in the shower, the hot water hitting my back, trying to wash away the anxiety that's become my second skin. I'm 26 years old. I'm climbing the corporate ladder at a marketing firm downtown, fighting tooth and nail for every promotion, every raise. And Mark is exactly where he was at 21. He graduated barely, and then nothing. No job hunt, no networking, no panic about the future. Why would he panic? The rent for our apartment in Lincoln Park isn't cheap, but his parents' monthly allowance hits his account like clockwork. He doesn't know the crushing weight of student loans or the fear of missing a bill. He treats life like an extended summer vacation. I get dressed, sharp blazer, heels, armour for the day. I walk into the living room. It smells like stale pizza and indifference. I grab my coffee, my eyes scanning the room. It's a mess. Not a dirty mess, but a clutter of unfulfilled potential. Books he bought but never read. A guitar he strummed for a week and abandoned. It's a graveyard of hobbies. I look at the clock, 7:15 a.m. I have to leave. I hesitate by the bedroom door. A part of me wants to go in there, shake him awake and scream, "Do you have any idea what time it is? Do you have any idea that life is passing you by?" But I don't. I never do. I just sigh, a sound that seems to scrape against my own throat, and walk out the door. The day at the office is a blur of meetings, deadlines and high-stakes emails. I thrive on it, but it's exhausting. By the time 6 p.m. rolls around, my brain feels like mush. My co-workers are heading out for happy hour. "Hey, Sneha, are you coming?" Jessica asks, leaning against my cubicle. "Drinks at the Smith?" I force a smile. "Can't tonight, Jess. Rain check?" "You always say that," she teases, but her eyes linger on me for a second too long. "Everything okay at home?" "Yeah, fine, just tired." I'm lying. I'm always lying. I can't tell Jessica, who is dating a neurosurgeon, that I'm going home to a boyfriend who has probably just woken up for his morning coffee. I can't tell her that I'm the one carrying the mental load of 2 adults. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. The ride home on the L train is when the doubts start creeping in. The dark thoughts. Am I the problem? I ask myself this every day. Maybe I'm too pushy. Maybe I'm too obsessed with success. Mark tells me I am. You're a control freak, babe, he says, laughing it off when I ask him about his resume. Why are you so obsessed with the rat race? We're young. We have time. But do we? I unlock the apartment door. The lights are dim. The TV is on some loud action movie. Mark is on the couch, feet up on the coffee table. He's wearing the same t-shirt he had on yesterday. Hey, he says, not looking away from the screen. You're home late. I was working, Mark, I say, dropping my bag on the counter. The exhaustion hits me all at once. Did you do the dishes? Silence then. Oh, shoot, I forgot. I was in the middle of a raid online. I'll get to it. He won't. We both know he won't. I'll do them tonight because I can't stand the sight of a dirty sink. I walk over to the fridge, grabbing a bottle of water. Did you send that email to the recruiter I told you about? The air in the room shifts. I feel it instantly. The temperature drops. Mark pauses the game, finally looking at me. His eyes aren't soft anymore. They're annoyed. Sneha, seriously, you just walked in the door. It's a simple question, Mark. It was a referral. All you had to do was attach your PDF and hit send. I was busy, he snaps. Busy doing what? My voice rises just a fraction. I try to keep it steady, but the dam is cracking. Sleeping until 1 p.m, playing Call of Duty for 6 hours. What is your plan, Mark? What are we doing here? He stands up, running a hand through his hair, frustrated. This is his defence mechanism. Make me feel like the villain. Make me feel like the nag. God, you're impossible lately, he says, shaking his head. My parents are sending money. We're fine. Why do you have to complicate everything? Why can't you just be happy? Because I don't want a roommate, Mark. I want a partner. The words hang in the air, sharp and jagged. He stares at me, and for a second I see a flicker of something. Shame? Anger? But then he shrugs it off, the armour of indifference sliding back into place. You're overreacting, he mutters, turning back to the TV. You're stressed from work. Just chill out. Come sit down. Order some takeout. I look at him. Really look at him. I see a boy. A 27-year-old boy who is perfectly content to let life happen to him rather than making it happen. I see someone who has no hunger, no drive, no concept of consequence. And suddenly I feel it, the weight. It's not just the rent, it's not just the dishes, it's the emotional gravity of dragging a dead body through life. I am pulling him uphill and he is digging his heels in, complaining about the view. I realise something terrifying in that moment. I am alone in this room. He's physically here, occupying space, consuming oxygen. But the man I need, the man who is supposed to build a future with me, he doesn't exist. Maybe he never did. I'm going to bed, I whisper. Already it's only 8 o'clock, he says, unbothered. All right, night, babe. He doesn't ask if I'm okay. He doesn't ask why my voice sounded like it was breaking. He just unpauses the game. The explosions from the TV fill the room again. I walk into the bedroom and close the door. I lean my back against the wood and slide down until I'm sitting on the floor, hugging my knees to my chest. My phone buzzes, a text from my mom. Dad found a great guy for your cousin. Engineer, very ambitious. When are you bringing Mark home again? We miss him. I stare at the screen, tears blurring the text. I can't bring him home. I can't explain to my father, a man who worked 2 jobs to put me through school, that the man I love has no ambition to work a single day in his life. And I can't explain that I'm trapped in a cycle of hope and disappointment. Every day I hope he'll change. Every day he proves me wrong. I wipe my eyes. The sadness is fading, replaced by something colder, something harder, resentment. It's a dangerous thing, resentment. It starts small, like a crack in a windshield. You ignore it for a while, thinking it'll hold, but then you hit a bump, a missed interview, a lazy Sunday, a forgotten promise, and the crack spreads. Tonight, sitting on the floor of my dark bedroom while my boyfriend kills virtual zombies in the next room, I hear the glass shattering. I am tired of being the only adult in this relationship. I am tired of the potential. Potential is just a fancy word for things that haven't happened yet. And looking at the closed door, hearing the mindless noise from the living room, I have a sinking realisation. It's never going to happen. He isn't just stuck, he is comfortable, and his comfort is costing me my sanity. I stand up and crawl into bed, but I don't sleep. I stare at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of the game. My heart is pounding, not with love, but with a terrifying clarity. I can't do this anymore. But leaving Leaving feels impossible. 5 years is a lifetime. Our lives are entangled. The lease, the friends, the memories. How do you just walk away? How do you look someone in the eye and tell them they aren't enough? I turn on my side, pulling the blanket tight. Tomorrow, I have to say something. I have to make him understand that we are standing on the edge of a cliff. But as I drift into an uneasy sleep, a voice in the back of my head whispers the truth. I'm too scared to speak aloud. It's already too late. The dead weight is dragging me down to the bottom of the ocean, and if I don't cut the rope soon, I'm going to drown with him. Little did I know the rope was about to snap in a way I never saw coming. Friday night. In any other relationship, Friday night is date night. It's the finish line of a grueling week. It's wine on the couch or a reservation at that Thai place on Wicker Park, or just the simple relief of being together without an alarm clock waiting to ambush you the next morning. But for me, Friday nights had become a countdown to disappointment. I was standing in the lobby of our apartment building, shaking the rain off my umbrella. My phone was burning a hole in my pocket. I had news, good news. Or at least I thought it was good news. My uncle, who works in logistics for a massive supply chain firm in the suburbs, had pulled some serious strings. He'd set up an interview for Mark on Monday morning. Entry-level management, good pay, benefits, a real career path. It was a lifeline, a golden ticket. I had spent the last 3 days begging, pleading, and practically selling my soul to get my uncle to agree to this. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the elevator mirror. Tired eyes, frizzy hair, hopeful smile, and press the button for the 4th floor. This is it, I told myself. This is the turning point. He just needs a chance. Once he gets in the door, he'll see. He'll wake up. I unlocked the apartment door. The smell hit me first. Not just the stale air this time, but the acrid scent of burnt popcorn and weed. Definitely weed. Mark, I called out, dropping my keys in the bowl. In here, a voice drawled from the living room. I walked in. The curtains were drawn, blocking out the city lights. The room was hazy. Mark was sprawled on the couch, surrounded by 3 of his college buddies, Dave, Mike, and some guy I didn't even know. Beer bottles cluttered the coffee table like little glass soldiers of an army I was losing to. They were laughing at something on the TV. When I walked in, the laughter died down, replaced by that awkward, guilty silence guys get when the mum figure walks in. Oh, hey, Sneha, Dave said, sitting up a little straighter. We were just, heading out soon. No rush, I said, my voice tight. I looked at Mark. He looked glassy-eyed, relaxed, completely detached from reality. Mark, can I talk to you? In the kitchen, he groaned, rolling his head back against the cushion. Babe, really? The guys are here. Can't it wait? No, it can't. The sharp edge of my voice must have cut through the haze because his friends exchanged uncomfortable glances. All right, Mark muttered. He heaved himself off the couch, shuffling into the kitchen in his socks. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. What is it? Did I forget to take the trash out again? I told you. I'll do it later. It's not the trash, I said, keeping my voice low so his friends wouldn't hear. I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed email. I slammed it on the counter. Read this. He squinted at the paper. What is this? It's an interview, Mark. Monday morning, 9 a.m. My uncle got you in. You don't even have to apply. You just have to show up, wear a suit and not sound like an idiot. It's $55,000 a year to start. I waited for the spark, the gratitude, the relief. I waited for him to grab me and say, thank you, Sneha. Thank you for believing in me. Mark looked at the paper and then back at me. A frown creased his forehead. Logistics, he scoffed. Sneha, I don't want to work in a warehouse. It's not a warehouse, it's corporate operations, and who cares what it is? It's a job. It's a paycheck. I'm not doing it, he said, pushing the paper back towards me. I'm not going to be some desk jockey in the suburbs. It's not my vibe. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands started to shake. Your vibe? Mark, you are 27 years old. You don't have a vibe? You have a gap in your resume the size of the Grand Canyon. Do you think you're too good for this? I think I'm worth waiting for the right opportunity, he shot back, his voice rising. I'm a creative person, Sneha. I can't be stifled in a cubicle. Creative? I let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. Mark, you haven't created anything in 3 years except a dent in that couch. You sleep until noon. You live off your parents. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to tell my family that my boyfriend is finding himself while I'm paying for the groceries? Oh, here we go. Mark threw his hands up. The money card. You love playing that, don't you? You love making me feel small. I don't want to make you feel small. I want you to stand up. I was screaming now. I didn't care about his friends in the other room. I want to build a life with you, but I can't do it alone. I am drowning, Mark. I am carrying both of us, and my back is breaking. Mark stared at me. For a second, he looked stunned. But then, that familiar, toxic defensive wall slammed down. You're being hysterical, he said coldly. You're stressed out from your job, and you're taking it out on me. I'm not going to that interview. End of story. Now, are you done? Because I have guests. He turned around. He actually turned his back on me to walk back to his friends. That was it. It wasn't a loud explosion. It wasn't a dramatic crash. It was a quiet, sickening snap inside my chest. It was the sound of the last thread connecting us, severing. I looked at his retreating back, the slumped shoulders, the casual arrogance, and I realised something. He didn't love me. He loved the convenience of me. He loved the safety net I provided. As long as I was there, he never had to grow up. I was his. Mark, I said. My voice was deadly quiet. He stopped but didn't turn around. What? If you walk back into that living room, I won't be here when you come back. He chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. Okay, Sneha. Stop with the drama. Go take a bath or something. He walked back into the living room. I heard him say to his friends, sorry about that, guys. She's just, women. Laughter. I stood in the kitchen for a full minute, staring at the granite countertop. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was beating slow, heavy thuds against my ribs. The tears didn't come. I was past tears, and I was in the Arctic zone of emotion. Numb, cold, clear. I walked past the living room, ignoring the glances of his friends, and went into the bedroom. I pulled my suitcase from the top shelf of the closet. I didn't pack everything, just the essentials, work clothes, underwear, toiletries, my laptop, and the photo of my parents from the nightstand. I moved with robotic efficiency. Fold, place, zip. I looked at the bed we had shared for 3 years. The sheets were rumpled on his side. I remembered the nights we spent whispering about our future, about travelling to Italy, about buying a house. Lies. All of it was just bedtime stories to keep me dreaming while he slept through reality. I zipped the suitcase shut. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. I put on my coat. I grabbed my purse. When I walked out of the bedroom, suitcase rolling behind me, the living room went silent. Mark looked up from his beer. His eyes went to the suitcase, then to my face. The smirk dropped from his lips. Whoa, he said, half laughing, half nervous. Where are you going? I'm leaving, Mark. He stood up, looking around at his friends, embarrassed. Babe, come on, put the bag away. You're making a scene. I'm not making a scene, I said, walking toward the door. I'm making a decision. Over a job interview, he shouted, stepping toward me. You're breaking up with me because I didn't want to go to some stupid interview. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I turned to look at him one last time. I wanted to remember this moment. I wanted to remember the confusion on his face, the selfishness in his eyes. No, Mark, I said softly. I'm not breaking up with you because of the interview. I'm breaking up with you because I finally realised you are never going to change, and I can't spend the rest of my life waiting for you to wake up. You'll be back, he yelled, his face turning red. You're going to walk out that door, cry in your car, and come back tomorrow begging me to forgive you. You can't handle being alone, Sneha. Watch me, I whispered. I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. Sneha, he screamed. If you leave now, we are done. Do you hear me? Done. I didn't look back. I pulled the door shut behind me. Click. The sound of the latch engaging was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I walked down the hallway, my heels clicking on the floor, the wheels of my suitcase humming a low tune. I got into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, hiding the hallway where I'd spent 5 years of my life, my knees finally gave out. I leaned against the metal wall, sliding down until I was crouching. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob. It hurt. God, it hurt like physical surgery without anaesthesia. It felt like I'd just cut off my own arm. But as the elevator dinged and the doors opened to the lobby, I stood up. I wiped my face. I walked out of the building and into the pouring Chicago rain. I didn't have an umbrella this time. I didn't care. The water felt cleansing. I hailed a cab. "Where to, miss?" the driver asked, eyeing my tear-streaked face in the rearview mirror. I hesitated. Where was I going? I had no apartment, no plan, no boyfriend. "Just drive," I said, looking out the window as the building and Mark disappeared into the wet, grey blur of the night. "Take me to the O'Hare Hilton. I need a room." As the cab merged into traffic, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief. It was terror, pure, unadulterated terror of the unknown. But for the first time in 5 years, the terror was mine. The future was blank, scary and empty, but it was mine. And little did I know, as I watched the city lights blur through the rain, that this wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the prologue to a twist of fate that would bring me back to Mark in a way I could never, ever have predicted. I thought I was leaving him behind in the dust. But fate was just taking notes. The first 3 months after I walked out of that apartment were a blur of cheap Chardonnay, aggressive spinning classes, and a silence so loud it made my ears ring. You don't realise how much space a person takes up in your life, even a lazy one, until they're gone. Mark was a dead weight, sure, but he was my dead weight. Without the constant stress of trying to fix him, I felt unmoored, like a kite with the string cut, just drifting. But I'm a fixer. That's my nature. Since I couldn't fix him, I decided to fix myself. I became a machine. I poured every ounce of that frustrated energy into my career. I was the first one in the office at 7 a.m. and the last one to leave at 8 p.m. I stopped eating garbage. I upgraded my wardrobe. I traded the messy bun for a sharp bob. I was shedding my old skin, scrubbing away the scent of failure and burnt popcorn. And then, about a year after the breakup, I met David. It was at a fundraiser for the Art Institute. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I was filling in for my boss. I was standing by the bar, nursing a sparkling water, scanning the room with that guarded, sceptical look I'd developed. "You look like you're analysing the structural integrity of the chandeliers," a voice said. I turned. He was tall. That was the first thing I noticed. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a tuxedo that fit him like it was sewn onto his skin. He had kind eyes, crinkles at the corners that suggested he laughed a lot, and a jawline that meant business. "I'm just wondering how long I have to stay before it's socially acceptable to leave and order Thai food," I replied, surprised by my own honesty. He laughed, a deep, rich sound. "I give it 20 minutes. I'm David. Sneha." David was different. He wasn't a project. He wasn't a fixer-upper. He was a finished product. He was 32. A director of operations at a major tech firm in the Loop. He owned a condo in the Gold Coast, not rented, owned. He had a 401k. He had a 5-year plan. He called his mother on Sundays. Our first date was at a steakhouse. He held the door for me. He pulled out my chair. He asked me questions about my career, my ambitions, my thoughts on the market, and he actually listened to the answers. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look at his phone. It was intoxicating, but it was also strange. I remember sitting across from him, sipping a Pinot Noir and feeling a weird panic rising in my chest. Where is the drama? I thought. Where is the chaos? Why isn't he asking to borrow money? Why isn't he complaining about his boss? It was so easy. It was so stable. "You okay?" David asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. His skin was warm. "You zoned out for a second." "I'm fine," I smiled, squeezing his hand back. "Just not used to this." "Used to what?" "A grown-up," I said. He chuckled, but his eyes were serious. "Well, get used to it, Sneha. I'm not going anywhere." And he didn't. We moved fast. When you know what you don't want, it's remarkably easy to recognise what you do want. David was safety. David was the rock I had been looking for while I was drowning in Mark's ocean of apathy. 6 months later, we moved in together. No dirty socks on the floor, no video games blaring at 2 a.m. Our apartment was a sanctuary of beige linen, scented candles and organised bills. A year after that, he proposed. It was on a boat on Lake Michigan, the skyline glittering behind us like a diamond necklace. It was perfect, cinematic. The ring was tasteful and expensive. Yes, I said, and I meant it. I loved him. I loved who I was when I was with him. I was successful. I was calm. I was the woman my parents always wanted me to be. We got married in the fall, a vineyard wedding. My father cried during the speech, thanking David for taking such good care of my girl. I remember looking at David during the first dance. He was solid. He was mine. I felt a profound sense of victory. I had won. I had escaped the trap of a dead-end relationship and clawed my way to the top. Mark was a distant memory, a ghost story I told myself to appreciate what I had now. I didn't know where he was. I didn't care. I assumed he was still on that couch or maybe back in his parents' basement in Connecticut, wasting away. Meanwhile, my career was exploding. With my home life stable, I became a shark at work. I moved from the marketing firm to a private bank handling high net worth clients. I was good at it. I was ruthless. I knew how to talk to people, how to make them feel secure, how to close the deal. Then the call came. It was a Tuesday afternoon, a headhunter from New York. Sneha, we've been watching your performance, the woman on the phone said. Her voice was crisp, professional. We're representing Sterling Hearts. They're opening a new division in Chicago. They need a senior analyst. The package is substantial. Sterling Hearts. My heart skipped a beat. This was the big leagues. This was Wall Street level, right here in Chicago. The kind of place where you didn't just have a job. You had a legacy. The bonuses alone were more than Mark used to get an allowance for a year. I'm listening, I said, spinning my chair to look out at the city view. The interview process was brutal. 5 rounds, case studies, psychological evaluations, but I crushed it. I was hungry. I was sharp. I walked into those rooms wearing my ambition like a tailored suit. When I got the offer letter, I literally screamed in my car. Babe, that's amazing, David said that night, popping a bottle of Dom Perignon. We were standing on our balcony, the wind whipping my hair. You did it! You're at the top of the food chain! I took a sip of the champagne, the bubbles dancing on my tongue. I looked at the city lights, millions of them, gridlocked and glowing. I paused, searching for the word. Invincible! You are, David said, kissing my temple. You've built the perfect life, Sneha. You deserve this. I leaned against the railing, closing my eyes. He was right. I had checked every box. Great husband, check. Luxury condo, check. Dream job at a multinational investment bank, check. I had completely erased the girl who used to cry on the bathroom floor because her boyfriend wouldn't get a job. She didn't exist anymore. I was Sneha, the survivor. Sneha, the success story. To the future, David toasted, clinking his glass against mine. To the future, I echoed. I went to bed that night, buzzing with adrenaline. My first day at Sterling Hearts was tomorrow. I had my outfit picked out, a charcoal grey pencil skirt, a silk blouse, killer stilettos. I had researched the company hierarchy. I knew the board members' names. I was ready to walk in there and own the place. I fell asleep with a smile on my face, wrapped in 600 thread count sheets next to a husband who adored me. I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea that while I was sleeping, the gears of fate were grinding into motion. I had no idea that the perfect life I had built was actually a glass house and I was about to throw a stone right through the centre of it. I woke up the next morning feeling like a queen. The sun was shining. The coffee tasted better. I kissed David goodbye. Knock 'em dead, Tiger, he said. I always do. I winked. I took an Uber to the financial district. The building was a monolith of glass and steel, piercing the sky. I walked into the lobby, the click-clack of my heels echoing on the marble. I badged in. I rode the elevator to the 45th floor. The air up there was thinner, cleaner. It smelled of money and power. Welcome to the team, Sneha, the HR director, a woman named Karen, said, handing me a welcome packet. We're so excited to have you. We have a department-wide strategy meeting in 10 minutes in the main boardroom. The new vice president of the division is flying in from the New York headquarters to lead it. You'll get to meet him. He's quite the legend around here, young but brilliant, a real turnaround artist. Sounds impressive, I said, adjusting my blazer. I felt a thrill. A brilliant young VP, maybe a mentor, maybe someone I could learn from. He is, Karen said, checking her watch. Let's head in. He hates it when people are late. We walked down the long corridor lined with modern art. My confidence was at an all-time high. I felt powerful. I felt ready. I walked into the boardroom. It was massive. A mahogany table that could seat 30 people stretched across the room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan. About 20 people were already seated, murmuring in hushed tones. Laptops open, coffees steaming. At the head of the table, a high-backed leather chair was turned away from us, facing the window. The person sitting there was looking out at the city, phone pressed to their ear. Yes, tell the Tokyo team to hold the hedge. I don't care what the index is doing. We hold. Okay. Bye. The voice. I froze in the doorway. My hand gripped the leather portfolio I was holding so hard my knuckles turned white. That voice. It was deeper, more authoritative, sharper. But I knew that timbre. I knew that cadence. It was a sound that had been etched into my brain for 5 torturous years. No! My brain screamed. Impossible! You're hallucinating! You're stressed! The HR director cleared her throat. Everyone, the meeting is about to start. The chair slowly swiveled around. Time didn't just stop. It shattered. The room, the people, the sounds of the city, everything dissolved into a buzzing white noise. All I could see was the man sitting in that chair. He was wearing a bespoke navy suit that probably cost more than my first car. His hair was cut short, styled with precision. He was clean-shaven, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. He looked fit, rested, and radiating an aura of absolute terrifying power. Mark. Well, not the Mark who slept until noon, not the Mark with a stained T-shirt. This was a stranger wearing Mark's face. His eyes, cold, calculating, and piercingly blue, swept across the room. He looked confident. He looked like a king holding court. And then his gaze landed on me, standing by the door. For a microsecond, just a fraction of a heartbeat, I saw a flicker in his eyes, a widening, a recognition, the shock that mirrored my own. But just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. A steel shutter came down over his expression. He didn't gasp. He didn't flinch. He just stared at me. My lungs stopped working. The air in the room felt suddenly sucked out, leaving a vacuum of pure panic. My perfect life, my upgrade, my confidence, it all evaporated in a single second. The man I had left for being a loser was my boss. And he wasn't just a boss, he was the wolf. Mark leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. Take a seat, he said. His voice was smooth, cold, and utterly professional. We have a lot of work to do. I stumbled toward the nearest empty chair, my mind screaming one question over and over again. What the hell just happened? Take a seat, he had said. 3 words. Just 3 simple words, but they hit me like a physical shove to the chest. I pulled out the heavy mahogany chair, the legs scraping softly against the plush carpet. The sound seemed deafening in the quiet room. My legs felt like jelly. I sat down, my knees knocking together under the table. I placed my hands on my lap, gripping my fingers together so tight that my nails dug into my skin. I had to stop them from shaking. If I put them on the table, everyone would see. Everyone would know. Breathe, Sneha! I screamed internally. Just breathe. This isn't happening. This is a nightmare. You're back in your bed next to David and in a minute the alarm will go off. But the alarm didn't go off. Instead, Mark cleared his throat. I didn't dare look up. I stared at the polished wood grain of the conference table, watching my own distorted reflection. I could feel his presence at the head of the table. It was heavy, magnetic. The air in the room had shifted. It wasn't just a meeting anymore. It was a performance, and he was the star. Good morning, Mark said. His voice was unrecognisable. The scratchy, sleepy mumble I had known for 5 years was gone. In its place was a baritone, resonant and commanding. It was the voice of a man who expects to be listened to. A man who commands 7-figure salaries. I've reviewed the Q3 projections for the Midwest division, he continued, pacing slowly. I could hear his footsteps, expensive leather shoes on the carpet. Thud, thud, thud. Frankly, I'm unimpressed. We are bleeding capital in the logistics sector and the risk assessment models you've been using are archaic. I forced myself to look up. I had to. I was a senior analyst. If I spent the whole meeting staring at my lap, I'd look incompetent. I lifted my eyes. He was standing by the whiteboard, a marker in hand. He was sketching a graph with sharp, decisive strokes. His back was to me. I looked at his shoulders, broad, tense. The suit jacket tapered perfectly to his waist. How? The question looped in my brain like a broken record. How is this the same man who couldn't figure out how to pay an electric bill online? How is this the man who told me Excel is for losers? He turned around, capping the marker with a loud snap. We need to pivot. Immediately, Mark said, his eyes scanning the room. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the director of sales, a man named Greg, who was 20 years older than him. Greg, your team's acquisition strategy is lazy. You're waiting for the market to come to you in this economy. That's suicide. Greg, a seasoned veteran who usually terrified junior staff, actually looked flustered. Well, sir, we thought given the volatility... I don't pay you to think about volatility. Mark cut him off. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The chill in his tone was enough to freeze the room. I pay you to exploit it. If you can't find the alpha in this market, I'll find someone who can. My stomach turned. He was ruthless. He was brilliant. He was terrifying. And he was a complete stranger. I watched him as he dismantled the team's strategy piece by piece. He used terminology that I had spent years studying. Derivatives, hedging, liquidity ratios, and he used them with a casual fluency that suggested he had been doing this for decades. I felt a bizarre sensation, a mix of admiration and horror. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, but the car is driving perfectly and you're the one standing in the middle of the road. Then it happened. The lion turned his gaze to the new meat. I see we have some new faces today, Mark said. He stopped pacing. He stood at the head of the table, leaning back against the whiteboard, crossing his arms. The room went silent. I felt 20 pairs of eyes shift toward me. Mark's eyes travelled down the table. They bypassed the two junior associates. They bypassed the admin assistant. They landed on me. For the first time since I walked in, he looked me dead in the eye. There was no warmth, no nostalgia, no, hey, remember me, I'm the guy you dumped. His face was a mask of professional indifference, but his eyes were burning. They were blue ice, sharp and piercing. You, he said, the new senior analyst. My throat felt like it was filled with sand. I tried to swallow. Yes? Name? He asked it like he didn't know. Like he hadn't whispered that name in the dark 1,000 times. Like he hadn't screamed that name as I walked out the door. I straightened my spine. I am Sneha. I am a professional. I built this career from scratch. I will not let him break me. Sneha, I said. My voice came out stronger than I expected. Sneha Patel. Mark nodded slowly. He didn't blink. Miss Patel, you're coming to us from, where was it? Private banking. Yes, Chase, private client. Retail banking, he said. The corner of his lip twitched. A smirk or just a muscle spasm? A bit of a jump to high-frequency investment, isn't it? This isn't about helping grandmas manage their pension funds anymore. A few people in the room chuckled nervously. Sycophants! I felt the heat rise up my neck. He was baiting me. He was publicly undermining my credentials in front of the entire board. I managed a portfolio of $200 million, I said, my voice steady. My risk-adjusted returns were in the top 1% of the firm. The room went quiet again. You don't talk back to the VP? Mark stared at me. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. 10 seconds. It felt like an eternity. I held his gaze. I refused to look away. I dare you, I thought. I dare you to bring up the past. Finally, Mark smiled. But it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who has found prey that might actually be fun to hunt. Good, he said softly. I like confidence. Let's see if your competence matches it. He turned away, dismissing me as if I were nothing more than a minor annoyance. Moving on to the Q4 forecasts. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked down at my notepad. I had written nothing. My hand was shaking so bad I couldn't hold the pen. The rest of the meeting was a blur. I heard words, synergy, downsizing, leverage, but I couldn't process them. All I could think about was the man at the front of the room. Who was this? Did he get an MBA in secret? Did he have a brain transplant? Or was this person always inside him, hiding under the layers of laziness, waiting for me to leave so he could come out? That thought hurt more than anything else. Was I the problem? Was I the one holding him back? Did my constant nagging, my pressure, my support actually suffocate him? Did he need to be broken to be built? The meeting ended at 11 a.m. Dismissed, Mark said. I want revised reports on my desk by Monday morning. Do not disappoint me. Everyone stood up, shuffling papers, rushing to get out of the room. The tension broke, replaced by the chaotic noise of people escaping. I packed up my things as fast as I could. I needed air. I needed to get to the bathroom. I needed to call David. I stood up and turned toward the door. Miss Patel. The voice cut through the noise like a knife. I froze. I was halfway to the door. I closed my eyes for a second, praying I had imagined it. A moment, please, Mark said. I turned around. The room had emptied out. It was just the two of us. Mark was still sitting at the head of the table. He was typing something on his phone. He didn't look up. Close the door, he said. I hesitated. My flight or fight response was screaming flight. Run to the elevator, run to the street, quit the job, move to Alaska. But I didn't. I walked over and pushed the heavy glass door shut. The click of the latch echoed in the massive room. I turned back to him. I stayed by the door, safe distance. I'm Mark, I said. It felt weird to say his name in this setting. He finally put his phone down. He looked at me. The professional mask slipped. Just a fraction. For a second, he looked tired. It's Mr. Reynolds in the office, Sneha, he said quietly. Mr. Reynolds, I repeated, the irony bitter on my tongue. You have got to be kidding me. Do I look like I'm kidding? How? I asked. The word burst out of me. Just how? You. I was a loser, he finished for me. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. He walked around the table, moving toward the window. He looked out at the city skyline. Is that what you were going to say? A deadbeat? A waste of space? I never said waste of space. You didn't have to, he said, his back to me. You said it with your eyes every morning when you left for work. You said it with the way you sighed when you came home. I was trying to help you, I snapped, the old anger flaring up. I carried us for 5 years, Mark. Don't you dare act like I was the villain. He turned around. His face was hard. You didn't carry me, Sneha. You buried me. The words hit me like a slap. I needed to hit rock bottom, he said, walking slowly toward me. And you were my safety net. As long as you were there, fixing everything, paying for everything, mothering me. I didn't have to grow. I didn't have to face myself. He stopped a few feet away. I could smell his cologne, a sandalwood, an expensive scotch. It was intoxicating. When you left, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I fell hard. I lost the apartment. I slept in my car for a week. My parents cut me off. My eyes widened. I didn't know that. I thought he had just gone home to luxury. I had nothing, Mark continued. And for the first time in my life, I was angry. Not at you, at myself. I realised you were right. I was nothing. He took a step closer. The air between us crackled with electricity. It wasn't sexual, not entirely. It was the tension of unresolved history, of wounds that had scarred over but never healed. So I worked, he said. I got a job in a mailroom at a brokerage firm. I worked 18 hours a day. I studied at night. I clawed my way up, rung by bloody rung. I didn't sleep. I didn't date. I didn't live. I just became this. He gestured to himself, to the suit, the office, the power. I did it to prove you wrong, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. Every promotion, every bonus, every win. I thought of you. I thought one day she'll see me. One day she'll realise she walked away from a king. I stood there stunned. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. I felt a confusing mix of pride and guilt. I had created this monster. My absence was the fuel for his engine. Well, I whispered, my voice trembling. You win, Mark. You're the king. Are you happy? He looked at me, really looked at me. His expression softened for a fleeting second, and I saw the boy I used to love, the boy who liked burnt popcorn and bad movies. I'm successful, Sneha, he said. Happiness is a liability I can't afford right now. He checked his watch. The mask slammed back into place. I have a lunch meeting with the board, he said, his voice turning cold and professional again. Your desk is in the bullpen. I expect you to be up to speed on the portfolio by end of day. We don't carry passengers here. He walked past me. He didn't touch me. He didn't look back. I stood there by the door, shaking. He was right. I had walked away from a loser, and in doing so, I had created a 10. But as I watched him walk down the hallway, commanding the respect of everyone he passed, I realised something terrifying. He wasn't done. He didn't just want me to see him successful. He wanted me to work for him. He wanted to control me the way I used to control him. This wasn't just a job, but this was a game of power, ego and revenge. And I had just walked right into the trap. I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. The fluorescent light seemed too bright. The noise of the trading floor was a roar in my ears. I walked to my cubicle, a small glass-walled box that felt incredibly shrinking compared to his corner office. I sat down. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "How's the first day going, babe? Eaten the world yet?" I stared at the screen. I typed back, "It's intense." I put the phone down. I looked at the glass wall of the VP's office across the floor. Mark was in there, sitting at his desk, the skyline of Chicago framing him like a halo. He looked up through the glass. Across 50 feet of office space, our eyes met again. He didn't smile. He just picked up his phone and held it to his ear, breaking the connection. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I was trapped in the lion's den, and the lion, he was hungry. 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours. That's how long I had been trapped in the glass cage of sterling hearts, working directly under the man whose heart I had broken, or who had broken mine, depending on who was telling the story. You'd think it would get easier, right? You'd think the shock would wear off, that the human brain would adapt to the absurdity of the situation, but it didn't. It got worse. It was like living with a ghost. A ghost who wore Tom Ford suits, signed my paychecks and critiqued my spreadsheets with a red pen that felt like a scalpel. The office became a minefield. Every morning I walked in with my armour on, perfect hair, perfect makeup, emotional walls built so high you'd need a satellite to see over them. And every morning, Mark, sorry Mr. Reynolds, would tear them down without even raising his voice. It wasn't that he was mean. That would have been easier to handle. If he had been yelling, I could have labelled him a jerk and moved on. No, he was worse. He was indifferent. He treated me like a malfunctioning printer. He looked through me, not at me. In meetings, he would dismantle my arguments with cold clinical logic, exposing every flaw in my work until I felt like an intern on her first day. "Miss Patel," he'd say, tapping a finger on the table, his eyes bored, "this risk assessment is optimistic to the point of delusion. Do it again." "But sir, the market trends suggest." "I don't care about suggestions. I care about data. Do it again." And I would do it again and again. I stayed late every night, fueled by caffeine and spite, determined to produce something he couldn't criticise. I was working harder than I ever had in my life, driven by a twisted need to prove that I was still the successful one, that I hadn't made a mistake. But the ghost was always there. It was in the way he poured his coffee. Black, 2 sugars, the exact same way he used to drink it in our old kitchen while wearing boxer shorts. Now he drank it from a crystal tumbler in a corner office, but the motion was the same. It was in the way he rubbed the back of his neck when he was stressed. I used to massage that spot. I knew exactly where the tension held. Now I had to sit across the boardroom table and watch him do it, my hands twitching in my lap, useless. And the worst part? The whispers. Offices are ecosystems of gossip. It didn't take long for people to notice the tension. They didn't know the history, but they sensed the electricity. "The VP is riding you hard," Jessica, one of the junior analysts, whispered to me in the break room. "I think he hates you." I stirred my tea, staring into the dark liquid. "He's just demanding, Jess." "No, it's personal," she insisted. "I've seen the way he looks at you when you're not looking. It's intense, like he wants to fire you or eat you alive." I can't tell which. Eat me alive, the phrase stuck in my head. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday in November. We were working on the Infinite Vanguard merger, a multi-billion-dollar acquisition that was going to make or break our fiscal year. The stakes were astronomical. The pressure was suffocating. It was 9:30 p.m. The bullpen was empty. The cleaning crew was vacuuming the far end of the hallway. The only lights on were in my cubicle and his office. I had just finished the 4th revision of the pitch deck. My eyes were burning. My head was pounding. I printed the document, stapled it, and walked towards his office. The glass door was open. Mark was standing by the window, looking out at the storm battering the city. The rain lashed against the glass, distorting the lights of Chicago into a smear of neon and grey. He had taken off his jacket. His tie was loosened. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms that were far more muscular than I remembered. I knocked softly on the doorframe. He didn't turn around. "Come in." I walked in, the carpet swallowing the sound of my heels, and the room smelled of ozone and expensive leather. "The revised deck," I said, placing the folder on his desk. "I adjusted the valuation models as you asked." "Believe it," he said. I hesitated. Is there anything else, sir? He finally turned. His face was shadowed. He looked exhausted. The polished, corporate cyborg mask was slipping. Underneath, I saw the man. The man who was carrying the weight of the world, or at least the weight of a massive chip on his shoulder. Why are you still here, Sneha? He asked. His voice was low, lacking its usual sharp edge. Because you asked for this report by morning. I ask for a lot of things. Most people go home. He walked over to his desk and sat on the edge of it, crossing his ankles. He picked up a crystal decanter of amber liquid. Drink? I blinked. I should drive. One drink won't kill you. It might make me more tolerable, though. He poured 2 glasses without waiting for an answer. He held one out to me. My hand shook slightly as I took it. Our fingers brushed. Zap. A static shock, sharp and hot, jumped between us. I jerked my hand back, almost spilling the scotch. Mark didn't flinch, but his eyes darkened. He saw it. He felt it. I took a sip. The alcohol burned pleasantly on its way down, settling my nerves. To the Vanguard merger, I muttered. To hell with the merger, he said, taking a large swallow. He looked at me over the rim of his glass. The silence stretched, heavy and thick. It wasn't the silence of strangers. It was the silence of 2 people who know each other's darkest secrets, screaming to be let out. You're good at this, he said suddenly. Excuse me? The job, you're good, sharp, relentless. He swirled the liquid in his glass. I tried to break you these last 3 weeks. I gave you the impossible workloads. I tore apart your best work. I wanted to see if you'd quit. I felt a flash of anger. Why? Because you want to punish me? No, he said softly, because I wanted to see if you were the same girl who left me, the girl who ran away when things got hard. I didn't run away because things were hard, Mark. I ran away because you were impossible. The outburst echoed in the quiet office. I clamped my mouth shut, regretting it instantly. We weren't supposed to talk about this. Mark stood up. He walked toward me. He didn't stop until he was standing inside my personal space. I had to tilt my head back to look at him. He was so tall, so imposing. I was impossible, he admitted. I was a child. But you... He looked down at me, his gaze tracing the line of my jaw. You were my anchor. And when you cut the rope, I didn't just drift, Sneha. I sank. Do you have any idea what it feels like to wake up and realise the only person who believed in you has decided you aren't worth the effort? I waited 5 years, I whispered, my voice trembling. I couldn't wait forever. I know, he said. His voice was rough, like gravel. And I hate that you were right. That's the worst part. I hate that my success proves you were right to leave. If you had stayed, I would still be on that couch. He took another step closer. I was backed up against the chair. My heart was hammering so hard I thought he could hear it. This was dangerous. This was the edge of the cliff. So tell me, Mark said, leaning in. His face was inches from mine. I could feel the heat radiating off him. Are you happy with him? With the husband? The mention of David was like a bucket of ice water. David, my sweet, stable, successful David, who was probably at home right now, keeping my dinner warm, wondering where I was. I stammered, yes, I love him. Mark searched my eyes. He was looking for a lie. He was looking for a crack in the armour. He's safe, Mark whispered. He's easy. He's the finish line you always wanted. But does he challenge you? Does he make you feel this? He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. The air between us was vibrating. The tension was so palpable, it felt like a physical weight crushing my lungs. I wanted him to kiss me. I wanted him to fire me. I didn't know what I wanted. My body betrayed me. I leaned in. Just a fraction of an inch. Ring, ring, ring. The sound of his cell phone on the desk was like a gunshot. We both jumped. The spell shattered into a million jagged pieces. Mark stepped back, running a hand over his face. He looked shaken. He cleared his throat and walked over to the desk. He looked at the caller ID. His expression changed instantly. The intensity vanished, replaced by a soft, almost gentle look. He picked up the phone. Hey, he said. His voice was warm, different. Yeah, I'm still at the office. No, don't wait up. I know, I'm sorry. I'll be quiet when I come in. Love you too. Love you too. The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. I stood there frozen, gripping my empty glass. I knew he was married. I had heard the rumours, but hearing him say it, Hearing that tenderness that used to be reserved for me, now directed at a faceless woman on the other end of the line, it felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it burst. Mark hung up the phone. He looked at me. The moment was gone. The vulnerability was gone. Mr. Reynolds was back. "Go home, Miss Patel," he said coldly, turning his back to me to look out the window again. "We have a big day tomorrow." I set the glass down on the coaster with a trembling hand. "Good night, sir," I whispered. I walked out of his office. I walked through the dark bullpen. I made it to the elevator. As the doors closed, isolating me in the metal box, I finally let out the breath I had been holding. My knees gave way and I leaned against the railing. I felt sick, not because he was married, but because of what I had almost done. I was a married woman. I loved my husband. But for 5 minutes in that office, David hadn't existed. For 5 minutes, the only thing in the universe was the magnetic pull of a man who was supposed to be my pass. I walked out of the building and hailed a cab. The rain was pouring harder now. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from David. I felt a wave of guilt so strong it made me nauseous. I was playing a dangerous game. I was walking on a wire over a pit of fire, and tonight I had almost fallen in. But as the cab drove me home, one thought kept looping in my mind, darker and more terrifying than the guilt. Mark had asked me if David made me feel this, and as I looked out at the Rain Street window, I realised the answer. David made me feel safe. He made me feel loved. But he had never, not once, made me feel the terrifying, electric, destructive passion that I felt when Mark looked at me. And that realisation terrified me more than anything. Because now I knew Mark wasn't just my boss. He was the one test I was destined to fail. And the exam had only just begun. The invitation landed on my desk like a grenade wrapped in cream-coloured cardstock. The Sterling Hearts annual winter gala. Black tie, spouses, welcome. I stared at the gold embossed lettering, feeling the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just a party. In the corporate world, these galas are battlegrounds. It's where alliances are forged over champagne, where careers are made or broken in the corner of a ballroom, and where everyone is judging everyone else's +1. I had to bring David. And Mark was going to bring her. The wife. The mystery woman, the architect of the man I couldn't build. For 3 days leading up to the event, I was a nervous wreck. I snapped at David for loading the dishwasher wrong. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark's face in that office, the way he looked at me, the way he almost kissed me, and the way he answered the phone with that devastating "love you too." "You okay, babe?" David asked the night of the gala, adjusting his bow tie in the mirror. He looked handsome, dependable, safe. "You've been vibrating with stress all week." "Just work pressure," I lied, smoothing down my emerald green silk gown. "The VP is intense. He'll be there tonight." "The turnaround artist?" David smiled, turning to kiss my forehead. "I can't wait to meet him. I want to shake the hand of the guy who's keeping my wife at the office until 9 p.m. I felt a wave of nausea. If you only knew, David. If you only knew that the hand you want to shake is the same hand that used to hold mine. We took an Uber Black to the venue, the Grand Ballroom at the Palmer House Hilton. It was opulent, crystal chandeliers the size of small cars, vaulted ceilings, and a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. As we walked in, I scanned the room like a secret agent looking for a sniper. "Champagne?" David asked, grabbing 2 flutes from a passing waiter. I downed mine in one gulp. "Another," I said. David raised an eyebrow but handed me his glass. "Okay, pacing yourself isn't on the menu tonight, I see." And then the crowd parted. He was standing near the centre of the room, holding court. And Mark, if he looked powerful in the office, here he looked like royalty. He was wearing a midnight blue velvet tuxedo jacket, a bold choice that only someone with supreme confidence could pull off. He was laughing at something a client said, head thrown back, a genuine, charismatic sound that I hadn't heard in years. And on his arm was the stranger. She wasn't what I expected. I don't know why, but I expected a shark, a corporate killer, someone cold and hard like him. But the woman standing next to him was radiant. She was petite, with soft curls and a smile that lit up the room. She was wearing a simple silver dress, but she wore it with an elegance that screamed old money. She had a hand resting lightly on Mark's forearm, a possessive, intimate gesture that made my stomach twist. Is that him? David asked, following my gaze. Yeah, I choked out. That's Mr. Reynolds. Let's go say hi. David, no. But it was too late. David, being the confident, friendly guy he is, was already steering me through the crowd. I was a prisoner in my own life, marching toward the executioner. Mark saw us coming. I saw the moment he registered David. His eyes did a quick vertical scan, sizing up the competition. Then the mask slid into place. The charming, untouchable executive. Miss Patel, Mark said, his voice smooth as silk. I'm glad you could make it. Good evening, Mr. Reynolds, I said, my voice sounding tinny and fake to my own ears. And this must be the husband, Mark said, extending a hand to David. David, my husband said, shaking Mark's hand firmly. Pleasure to meet you. Sneha talks about the new direction of the department constantly. Sounds like you're shaking things up. We're trying, Mark said, smiling. It was a terrifyingly polite smile. Your wife is a valuable asset to the team, David. Very dedicated. The double meaning hung in the air, invisible to everyone but me. And this, Mark said, turning to the woman beside him, is my wife, Claire. Claire. Her name was Claire. Hi, she said, extending a warm hand to me. Her grip was firm. Her eyes were warm, brown and intelligent. I've heard so much about you, Sneha. My blood froze. What? You have? Oh, just about the new team, she laughed, sensing my panic. Mark tells me he's pushing everyone hard. He's a perfectionist. I keep telling him to let you poor people sleep once in a while. She laughed. Mark chuckled. David laughed. I stood there, forcing a smile, feeling like I was dissociating. So, David, Mark said, turning the attention away from me, Sneha mentioned you're in tech. Operations? Yeah, Director of Ops at Cyberdyne Systems, David said, puffing his chest out a little. He was proud of his job, and he should be. Impressive, Mark said. Supply chain integration is tricky right now. How are you handling the semiconductor shortage? And just like that, Mark engaged him. He didn't belittle David. He didn't ignore him. He debated him. They started talking shop, and within 2 minutes, I realised something that made me want to scream. Mark was smarter than David. David was reciting industry talking points. Mark was countering with global macroeconomic trends and obscure geopolitical risks. Mark was running circles around my husband, and David didn't even realise it. He thought they were having a friendly chat, but Mark was asserting dominance in the most polite way possible. I couldn't watch. I'm going to the ladies' room, I mumbled. I'll come with you, Claire said brightly. My feet are killing me in these heels. Great. We walked to the restrooms in silence. I was frantically trying to think of safe topics, weather, the appetizers. Inside the opulent marble bathroom, Claire leaned against the counter and sighed, kicking off one heel. God, I hate these things, she said, massaging her foot. She looked at me in the mirror. You look beautiful, by the way. That colour is stunning on you. Thank you, I said, washing my hands just to have something to do. You too. You and Mark, you make a lovely couple. The words tasted like ash. Claire smiled, a soft, knowing smile. It took a lot of work to get here. He wasn't always like this, you know. I froze, the water running over my hands. Oh? No, she said, checking her lipstick. When I met him about 4 years ago, he was a mess. Angry, broke, working in a mailroom and sleeping on a mattress on the floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. She was talking about the aftermath, my aftermath. He was driven, though, Claire continued. Obsessively so. He had this chip on his shoulder the size of Manhattan. He told me he had something to prove, some ghost from his past he needed to bury. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were no longer just warm. They were searching. He never told me her name, Claire said softly. But he told me she broke his heart. And he told me that he would become the kind of man she would regret leaving every single day for the rest of her life. I stopped breathing. The bathroom went silent. Does she know? Does she suspect? He's intense, Claire said, putting her lipstick away. But he's loyal. He built himself up from nothing for me. Well, for us, and maybe a little bit for her, whoever she was. She put her shoe back on and smiled at me. Ready to go back out into the shark tank? I'll be out in a minute, I whispered. Okay, see you out there, Sneha. She walked out. I gripped the cold marble of the sink. I stared at my reflection. My pupils were dilated. My skin was pale. The ghost from his past. I wasn't just an ex-girlfriend. I was the villain in his origin story. I was the trauma that fueled his success. And this woman, this lovely, kind, intelligent woman, she was reaping the rewards of the fire I started. I broke him down so she could build him up. I felt a sudden sharp stab of jealousy, so potent, it almost brought me to my knees. It wasn't just that he was successful. It was that he was hers. He was the man I always knew he could be, but he was being that man for someone else. I dried my hands and walked back out. I needed a drink. I needed to leave. I found them near the balcony doors. David was laughing at something Mark said. There she is, David said, reaching for my hand. And Mark looked at me. His expression was unreadable. David was just telling me about your trip to Napa last year, Mark said. Sounds romantic. It was, I said sharply. David is very romantic. Mark's lip curled slightly. Good, you always liked stability, predictability. It was a dig, a subtle, vicious dig. You like boring, he was saying. You couldn't handle the fire, so you settled for the fireplace. I think I need some air, I said. David, can we go to the terrace? Actually, Mark interjected. David, I see the CEO of Nexus over there. You said you wanted an intro. I can make that happen right now. David's eyes lit up. Seriously, that would be huge. Go ahead, Mark said, gesturing toward the VIP section. Tell him I sent you. I need to borrow your wife for a moment to discuss the Tokyo account before Monday. David looked at me, torn. Is that okay, babe? I'll be 2 minutes. Go, I said. What else could I say? David disappeared into the crowd. Claire was talking to a group of donors nearby. It was just me and Mark, standing on the edge of the dance floor. You're playing a dangerous game, Mark, I hissed, stepping closer to him so no one would hear. Sending my husband away? I'm helping his career, Mark said innocently. He's a nice guy, Sneha. A little simple, but nice. I see why you picked him. He's safe. He'll never challenge you. He'll never make you look in the mirror and question who you are. Stop it. Why? Does the truth hurt? You're not the man I knew, I said, shaking my head. You're a stranger. You're cold. You're manipulative. Mark stepped in. He dropped the voice to a whisper, sending shivers down my spine. I'm the man you made, he said. Look at me, Sneha. Look at the suit. Look at the title. Look at the wife. Isn't this exactly what you wanted? You wanted ambition? Here it is. You wanted success? I'm swimming in it. But you're not happy, I challenged him. I can see it in your eyes, Mark. You're acting. He laughed, a low, humourless sound. And you are? He asked. He leaned down, his lips inches from my ear. From a distance, it looked like a boss whispering a confidential business update, but the words he spoke were anything but professional. I saw the way you looked at me in the office the other night, he whispered. And I saw the way you looked at me tonight when I walked in. You're starving, Sneha. You're starving in a banquet hall because you realised that you ordered the wrong meal. My breath hitched. He was stripping me bare, peeling back every layer of denial I had wrapped myself in. You love him, Mark whispered. I know you do. But you don't burn for him, and we both know you missed the fire. He pulled back. He straightened his jacket. Enjoy the party, Miss Patel, he said in his normal voice. He turned and walked away, slipping his arm around Claire's waist as she turned to smile at him. He kissed her cheek, a tender, genuine gesture that tore my heart out. I stood there alone in the middle of the crowded ballroom. The music was loud. The laughter was deafening, but I felt completely isolated. I looked at David across the room, shaking hands with the CEO, looking so happy, so proud. And then I looked at Mark, the Dark King, holding court with his queen. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I quickly wiped it away before anyone could see. Mark was right. I was starving, but the terrifying part wasn't the hunger. The terrifying part was realising that I was the one who had thrown away the feast because I was too impatient to wait for it to cook. I watched him, and I finally understood. He wasn't the failure. I had failed to see his potential. I had failed to have faith, and now I was failing to be loyal to the husband who actually deserved it. But as I watched Mark's eyes flicker towards me one last time from across the room, a dark, possessive glance that promised this game was far from over, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to be able to stay away. The stranger wearing his face was pulling me in, and I was terrified that I was going to let him. The cursor blinked. Line, space, line, space. It was a hypnotic, rhythmic pulse on the white screen of my laptop. I'd been staring at it for 20 minutes, the blue light stinging my tired eyes. To Mark Reynolds, Vice President, from Sneha Patel, Senior Analyst, subject, resignation. It was done. The letter was short, professional, and completely devoid of the hurricane of emotions that was currently tearing my insides apart. I typed my name at the bottom. My finger hovered over the print button. It had been a week since the gala. A week of sleepless nights lying next to David, listening to his steady breathing, feeling like a fraud. A week of walking into the office and feeling the air get sucked out of the room every time Mark walked by. I couldn't do it. I was strong, but I wasn't made of stone. The game Mark was playing, the psychological warfare, the subtle reminders of what we used to be, the display of his new perfect life was slowly driving me insane. I was jeopardising my marriage, my sanity and my self-respect for a job. I hit print. The printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out the single sheet of paper that would end this chapter of my life. I grabbed it. I didn't put it in an envelope. I wanted him to see it immediately. It was 8:45 p.m. The office was a ghost town. The cleaning crews were on the lower floors. It was just me, the hum of the servers, and the light spilling out from the glass box at the end of the hall. I walked towards his office. My heels didn't click this time. I walked softly, like I was approaching a bomb I was about to defuse. The door was ajar. Mark was sitting at his desk, but he wasn't working. He was staring out the window at the Chicago skyline, a tumbler of water in his hand. He looked solitary, not lonely, but singular, like a statue placed on a high pedestal where no one could touch him. I knocked on the glass. He didn't turn. It's late, Sneha. Go home. I'm going home, I said, stepping into the room. For good. He swiveled the chair around. His face was unreadable, the shadows of the room carving deep lines into his features. He looked at the paper in my hand, then up at my eyes. He didn't look surprised. I see, he said quietly. I walked over and placed the resignation letter on his pristine mahogany desk. It looked small and insignificant against the vastness of his success. Effective immediately, I said. I'll forfeit the bonus. I just want out. Mark picked up the paper. He didn't read it. He just held it, testing the weight of it. Is this about the gala? He asked. Well, it's about everything, Mark, I said, my voice shaking just a little. It's about the fact that I can't breathe in this building. It's about the fact that you're playing a game with my life and I'm done being a pawn. He dropped the paper back onto the desk. He stood up and walked around to the front, leaning against it, crossing his arms. The predator was gone. In his place was just a man, a tired man. I wasn't playing a game, he said softly. Bullshit, I snapped. The looks, the comments, introducing me to your wife, telling me I'm starving. You wanted to punish me. You wanted to show me what I missed out on. Well, congratulations, Mark. You win. You're the big success story. You're the VP. You're the king. Are you happy now? The question hung in the air, vibrating with 5 years of suppressed anger. Mark looked down at his shoes, polished, expensive Italian leather. Then he looked up, and for the first time since I had walked into that conference room a month ago, his eyes were completely unguarded. No, he said. The honesty of the answer stopped me cold. I'm not happy, he continued, his voice rough. I'm satisfied, I'm proud, I'm powerful, but happy? That's a different thing. He took a step towards me. I held my ground, though every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. You want to know the truth? Mark asked. You want to know why I changed? Why I became this? Yes, I whispered. I need to know, was it just to spite me? He let out a short, dry laugh. Spite is good fuel, Sneha. It burns hot. It gets you out of bed at 4 a.m. It makes you read textbooks until your eyes bleed. But spite burns out. You can't build a life on it. He walked over to the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. When you left, he said, I didn't just lose my girlfriend. I lost my excuse. Your excuse? My excuse for being mediocre, he turned back to me. As long as you were there nagging me, pushing me, paying the bills, I could be the victim. I could be the misunderstood artist. I could blame the world and I could blame you for pressuring me. You were my crutch, Sneha, and you were a damn good one. He paused, his eyes locking onto mine. But when you walked out that door, when I was sitting alone in that empty apartment with no one to blame but myself, I had a choice. I could die, figuratively, maybe literally, or I could grow up. So I was the villain, I said bitterly. No, Mark shook his head. You were the catalyst. You were the fire that burned the dead wood so the new forest could grow. He walked closer, stopping just a foot away. The energy in the room shifted. It wasn't sexual anymore. It was tragic. It was the heavy, suffocating weight of what could have been. I met Claire about a year later, he said softly. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't try to push me. I was already moving by then. She just ran beside me. She's wonderful. I love her. But I asked. I shouldn't have asked. Mark looked at me, his gaze travelling over my face as if memorising it for the last time. But she didn't know me before, he whispered. She sees the VP. She sees the suits and the money. She never saw the boy on the couch. She never saw the mess. You're the only person in the world who knows both versions of me, Sneha. You're the only one who knows how far I've climbed because you're the only one who saw me at the bottom. Tears pricked my eyes. I fought them back. And that, he said, his voice cracking slightly, is why I couldn't let you go. That's why I hired you. That's why I tortured you. Because when you look at me, I feel seen. For the first time in 5 years, I don't feel like a fraud. I let out a shaky breath. A tear escaped and rolled down my cheek. Mark, I whispered, we can't do this. I know, he said. He reached out. His hand hovered near my face, trembling slightly. He wanted to wipe the tear away. I wanted him to, but he didn't. He let his hand drop. You love him, Mark said. It wasn't a question. I do, I said. David he's good. He's kind. He's my home. He's lucky, Mark said. A sad smile touched his lips. He got the best version of you, the version that learned she deserves more. And Claire, she got the best version of me, the version that learned responsibility. The realisation hit me like a physical blow. We were never meant to be the destination. We were the journey. I was the lesson he needed to learn responsibility. He was the lesson I needed to learn self-worth. We broke each other open so that we could be whole for other people. I'm sorry, Mark, I said, for leaving the way I did. Don't be, he said firmly. If you hadn't left, I would still be sleeping on that couch and you would still be miserable. You saved us both, Sneha. It hurt like hell. He walked back to his desk. He picked up the resignation letter. He took a pen from his pocket and signed it with a flourish. He handed it back to me. You're free, he said. I took the paper. It felt lighter now. What will you do? I asked. I'll keep climbing, he said, turning back to the window. It's what I do now. It's who I am. And the hunger? I asked, echoing his words from the gala. He looked at me over his shoulder. The wolf was back in his eyes, but it was tamer now. Controlled. I learned to live with it, he said. Goodbye, Sneha. Goodbye, Mark. I turned and walked out of the office. I didn't look back. I knew if I looked back, if I saw him standing there, alone in his glass tower, I might crumble. I walked down the hallway, past the empty cubicles, past the silent conference room where I'd first seen him again. I pressed the elevator button. When the doors opened to the lobby, the security guard nodded at me. Working late again, ma'am? Not anymore, Joe, I smiled. I'm done. I pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out into the crisp Chicago night. The wind was biting, but it felt good. It felt real. I pulled my phone out. Dialing. David. Hey, babe. David's voice answered on the first ring. He sounded sleepy. Everything okay? You coming home? Yeah, I said, looking up at the skyscraper one last time. I found the window on the 45th floor. The light was still on. I'm coming home, David, and I quit the job. You what? David sounded wide awake now. Why? What happened? I'll explain when I get there, I said, walking toward the line of waiting cabs. Let's just say I realised I was overqualified. I got into the cab. Where to? The driver asked. Home, I said. Lincoln Park. As the cab pulled away, merging into the stream of red taillights, I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. I thought about the question that had haunted me for weeks. Was I a failure as a girlfriend? No. I wasn't a failure. I was a teacher. And sometimes the hardest part of being a teacher is knowing that once your student graduates, they leave your classroom and go on to do great things, things they could never do while they were sitting at your desk. Mark Reynolds was a vice president, a millionaire, a success story. And I was the woman who made him. But the credit didn't belong to me and it didn't belong to him. It belonged to the heartbreak. Some people come into our lives to love us, and some come to break us just enough so that the light can finally get in. I watched the city blur past, finally at peace. The business was finished.